The Primrose Line is a 7-mile branch line from Buckfastleigh to Totnes that has been running in one form or another since the late 1880s.
It was opened in 1887 under Brunel with broad gauge in this station, and this is an original branch line here, and it was closed to passenger traffic in 1958. Carried on with goods till 1964, and then in 1969 reopened as a private trust. And it's changed hands a couple of times since then, and it was bought out finally by the volunteers that work on this railway.
The broad gauge engine, tiny in the museum, is the only existing one in the world which is not a replica.
Passed for driving on BR on the 12th of August 1966 after doing 10 years as a fireman. So I've been driving trains on and off ever since then. My last session on the footplate was yesterday on this engine. I don't drive every day, just now and again. Keeps your hand in, as it were.
The volunteers switch jobs daily.
This was the largest restoration project we've undertook down here. This is a 280 goods engine, and when it arrived here from the scrapyard, components here would have been missing. The boiler needed completely refurbishing, and where all these rods and everything had been removed, all the pins had gone rusty, all the bearings underneath where the bearings had been taken had gone rusty. So we had to strip it right down, machine all the bearings, obtain all the parts, which was the hardest job, and then, lo and behold, £400,000 we got an engine.
Sadly, a lot of trains don't get restored because they have parts that simply can't be replaced, or there's not enough time or money. The railway was originally built by Brunel and built in broad gauge. There were financial problems, so when the railway did open in 1872, it was purchased a few years later by the Great Western Railway, who converted it to Stephenson's standard gauge.
This carriage was built in 1896 at Swindon, and previously was a bungalow which we found near Crediton some years ago. Brought it down here, took the roof off, stripped it down, and we're restoring it now. When it's completed in about a month's time, as it originally was, we're going to put it by the cafe, and we're fitting bench seats inside, and it will be used for school children as a film show, and we're also partly used as for board meetings and various other items. But it will not run on the main line because it does not have its original chassis, which is now unobtainable.
The railway never made a profit like many other branch lines, for it was used for goods traffic, and in 1906 the volume was so great they had to build a large depot.
In fact, it was mainly steam when I was a young man, and I used to live near a big railway, and I used to watch trains going up and down sidings and spend all day watching them.
Steam railways are a way of life for many people. Some have spent many years devoted to it and making sure it lives on for future generations. This heritage may be sadly lost if future generations don't carry it on.
When I was young, of course, all the railways were steam-hauled, and I suppose it was most young boys' dream to one day become an engine driver, and I actually achieved that. I'm quite proud of it, really.
The railway continued service through both World Wars and was nationalised in 1948. The railway was closed to the public in 1958 and then freight a few years later. In 1969 it was reopened by Beeching as a preserved line, ironically the man who had shut railways all over Britain.
Well, main line, of course, generally speaking, is pretty hard work. It's compare with a branch line, which can be quite laid back. Main line work tends to be a bit sort of death and glory. Branch line work is generally speaking much easier, although it does have its moments, particularly if you're working up and down a branch like this and you're the fireman. You have to couple up and uncouple this engine no fewer than 8 times, and that is quite a job. And after a day on this engine, on this branch, where you've been working perhaps up to 11 hours, you know you've done it.
The Primrose Line used to run to Ashburton, but in the early 60s some changes were made to the A38 trunk road, so now it only goes as far as Buckfast Lee.
These days it's the money. If you've got the money, you can turn a real wreck around in about 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, when most of this stuff was purchased, you had to raise the money as well, which was definitely the hardest thing.
Economical as a company, in the 1990s South Devon Railway became a charity. It is run by volunteers and has been operating well ever since, with thousands of people visiting each year.